Good morning. This is Leanne Ferguson. Thank you for joining or watching this recorded information about the Safe Routes to School Construction Grant Program. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties this morning, but I want to get this up by April 1st, so please bear with me. I work for the Oregon Department of Transportation as the Safe Routes to School Program Manager. I have been working in Safe Routes to School for about 15 years or so, started teaching bike and pedestrian classes at schools and loved it, moved on to managing Safe Routes programs, and am now working at ODOT on this construction. My passion is for kids and for education, so this is exactly what I want to be doing and where I want to be. Today we'll talk about what is Safe Routes to School, funding for Safe Routes to School. The Safe Routes to School construction program is what we'll focus on, and tips for developing a good proposal. What is Safe Routes to School? So these are the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School. When all of these E's happen together, we see about a 43% increase in kids walking and biking to school. So that is why ODOT has a non-infrastructure program, an education program that has grants every 3 years or so, and the grant manager is named Heidi Manlove, and her information is here at the bottom. And also a Safe Routes to School infrastructure program or construction program, which is what we're soliciting applications for this spring and summer. So a little overview about the funding is that in House Bill 2017, $10 million was dedicated for Safe Routes to School construction projects off the top of the new transportation funding bill. That funding increases to $15 million in 2023. We created some rules to help guide this program, and now we have a Safe Routes to School construction program. Some key dates are at the bottom. Just to keep you interested in the rest of this presentation, on April 1st, our materials will be online. On June 15th, our letter of intent will be due, and on August 31st is when the application will be due. So this round, we will have about $30 million to allocate through 3 different programs: the Competitive Grant Program, the Rapid Response Grant Program, and the Planning Assistance Program, which is the Project Identification Program. So the Competitive Grant Program is what's happening this spring and summer to get you grant funding to build sidewalks and crosswalks for kids in your community. The Rapid Response Grant Program is a running program. It's open all year round. You can submit an application anytime, and I'll go over what constitutes one of those projects. And the Project Identification Program, we will have a solicitation this summer as well that we can send a consultant to your community to create a Safe Routes to School plan, help you and the school community work together. We'll start with the Project Identification Program, this Planning Assistance Program. Again, this is a program where we can send a consultant to your community. They'll work with you and the school community to create a Safe Routes to School plan for you that can then be a locally adopted plan that can then be mentioned or aligned with your transportation system plan, or in your next update it can be added in there. What you will get is a Safe Routes to School plan. The ODOT consultant will do the work on behalf of your jurisdiction. Your responsibility would be for the school community and the road authority to work together and create a project management team that would meet with our consultant during that 21-week process to create the plan. We will have applicant materials online April 1st. You have an optional letter of intent that you can fill out April 1st through June 15th. On June 1st through August 31st, we'll have our application open. In September, the applications will be scored. In November is when we will notify communities. Eligible entities are cities, counties, tribes, transit districts, any road authority, and school districts are also eligible for the Planning Assistance Program. We're looking for communities with high safety risk factors. We're looking for low-income populations. We're looking for communities that don't have the capacity to plan locally, and we're looking for communities where all partners can commit to participating. So all the road authorities needed, and the school to be at the table. We'll choose up to 30 communities. Again, we need confirmation of that commitment of all the schools involved and all the road authorities involved, and it generally takes about 21 weeks to create this plan. The bulk of what we will be doing this summer will be the competitive construction grant program. So I'll talk a little bit about the timeline, eligibility, match, program selection, and project delivery. So the competitive grant program timeline, why this is important. The letter of intent for this program is required, so you'll need to fill a letter of intent out April 1st through June 15th, just telling us a little bit about what project you're thinking about applying for. The full application will be June 1st to August 31st. Staff review will be September to October. We'll have our advisory committee take a look and make a recommendation in October, and then in December the list will go to the Oregon Transportation Commission, and we'll start getting agreements signed in January of 2021. We'll have about $26 million to allocate. During the first round we had about $16 million to allocate, and we got $85 million worth of grant requests, and we'd anticipate a lot of folks applying for this, reapplying for this project, but we're going to be able to fund a lot more projects with 26 million than 16. So please submit your letters of intent and applications. Who can apply is cities, counties, ODOT, tribes, transit districts, and any other road authority. So we're looking for folks who have control over the roads to apply for this grant. Project eligibility, we have a pretty long list of things that have to be present in order to for a project to be eligible for this program. So one of the main ones is that we need support of the school district, so you'll need a support letter, which we'll provide a template for the school district or the school. The project needs to be within a 1 mile radius of the school. It needs to be on a public road right-of-way. Which is a road or an area that is planned to be a road in a plan, and referenced in a plan as a site of a future road. It is not school property, private property, or an off-street path that's not directly parallel to a road. It needs to address a barrier to students walking and biking to school, so it needs to be pretty much a project that primarily affects bicyclists and pedestrians. The grant is a minimum. You need to ask for a minimum of $60,000, a maximum of $2 million, and we're not looking for a grant where you're paving your entire road. We're looking for if pavement's necessary for the bike and ped pieces, that it's okay to have paving in the grant, but not just paving an entire road. Some of the main projects that we've seen are sidewalk infill, new sidewalks, pedestrian islands, flashing beacons, crossings, separated bike facilities, things along that line. This is a new eligibility from the last cycle, and it is a commitment to outreach. Our grantees must commit to completing an awareness and safety outreach campaign at a minimum level, because that's how we know when fewer injuries happen and when walking and biking increases. So what we're looking at is a commitment to send out a newsletter for the school community, put out a press release about the project once it's completed, and send home some backpack mail, like a safety brochure and a backpack mail telling kids about the new project. If you're already doing safe routes to school education and encouragement in your community, that can count as the requirement. So we've updated the school commitment letter to include a couple of things, like allowing the road authority to put in a newsletter article and put in some backpack mail, and ODOT will provide you with templates for all of those things. So a minimum level of commitment to outreach is required. The project has to be aligned with a plan. It can be a Safe Routes to School plan that we're creating through the Project Identification Program, or a Safe Routes to School action plan. Also, it can be a transportation system plan, or really any other locally adopted plan. It doesn't have to be listed by name in those plans. It just needs to be aligned with a policy in those plans. There is a local cash match requirement. It is 40%. But it can be reduced to 20% when one of the following conditions apply: that the school is located in a city with a population of 5,000 people or fewer, the project reduces a hazard within a priority safety corridor, and we'll go over the definition for that. Or if the school site qualifies as a Title I school, which is a school where 40% or more students are eligible for free and reduced lunch. Those make you eligible for the 20% local cash match. Definition of a cash match is something reasonable, necessary, and directly related to the project that we're funding you to complete. So, and actual funds may be considered up to 2 years prior to the project application deadline. So any work that you're planning to do or any work that you've done in the past 2 years can be counted towards your cash match requirement, and we'll have a couple of tips on how to do that, how to reach that cash match requirement later on in the presentation. Again, Title I schools refers to a school in which children from low-income families make up at least 40% of enrollment, and you can find that through the free and reduced lunch rate at your school. And priority safety corridor. So this is important on 2 levels. If it's a priority safety corridor, then you're eligible for the 20% cash match. Also, this is when we're scoring applications, this will help prioritize your application, these aspects. So ways that you can identify a priority safety corridor. If your project is on a road where the speed or the 85th percentile is 40 miles an hour or greater, that is a priority safety corridor. That is a hard road for kids to walk along or cross. Or if 2 or more of the following exist. The speed limit is 30 miles per hour or greater. More than 2 lanes of traffic or a crossing distance of greater than 30 feet exists for the students. There's 12,000 or greater annual average daily traffic, or it has a demonstrated history of crashes related to school traffic, which we're defining as bike ped crashes within 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So what will be required of you to submit a letter of intent that's due by June 15th. It confirms the eligibility, it provides high-level project descriptions, it gets your information and the school information, and kind of gets a rough idea of how much you're looking at, or there'll be a series of ranges that you can choose from. The application is due August 31st, and it will include all of the information from the letter of intent, so save that whenever, save the PDF of that whenever you submit it. And also include project and school specifics, safety information, a more detailed cost estimate and timeline, all of your match information, as well as a map of your project, photos, support letters, and your signature page. So all of those will be in your application. Once your application is submitted, it will go to the Project Selection Committee, which is our Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee. So this is a committee that's advisory to the Oregon Transportation Commission and to us at ODOT. It has about 18 members, and they're from all over the state, from different types of organizations with a background in law enforcement or teaching or pupil transportation or safe routes to school programming, health, tribal representation. So they are all appointed by the ODOT director. They help with our project criteria and selection as well. So they're the ones who created the scoring process for the applications, and they consult with the Oregon Transportation Safety Committee and the Oregon Bike and Ped Advisory Committee. So I'm gonna review how we're gonna score the applications. So the first thing that we'll do is we will look for eligibility criteria. So we're looking for things like, does the solution project description appear to match with the problem and barrier that you've described? We're looking for the scope and the project description to be in alignment. We're also looking for applicants to have checked off a set of criteria in the application, which are things that we just went over, like project aligning with a plan within a 1 mile of school, that has a school support letter and has support from all the road authorities involved. We will do a ground conditions review to make sure to look for potential issues, and if an issue is identified at some point during the review of this, the eligibility criteria, we will reach out to the applicant and give them a chance to reassess their application and update it. So those are the things that we're looking for. Step 2 will be scoring the application. So our focus area on scoring will be an equity focus, where there's a lot of need out there, and we're trying to focus in our limited amount of funding on the students that need it most. So we're looking at free and reduced lunch rates at schools, which will get points for the application, and this is points out of 500. So you'll notice that the focus area, you can get 195 points. We're looking at free and reduced lunch rate, as well as other vulnerability assessment data points. Every English learners, non-white students, and chronic absenteeism will be a couple of ways that you can get a couple of extra additional points as well. All of this information is found on your school report card. If you Google Oregon school report cards, you'll find a search engine that allows you to look up your school. And we'll have links to that in the application, as well as on our website. You can get some additional points by having a project that is ready. We'll be looking at, this will be a sort of a scalable section. We'll be looking at right-of-way, public process, environmental, things like stormwater, utilities, and design can get some extra points if you've got those things figured out. Then safety is like the main focus of our program, so that gets also significantly weighed. We're looking at crashes, we're looking at speed of the road, we're looking at lanes or crossing distance, and average annual daily traffic. Also, this is where if your project is on a priority safety corridor, which we defined earlier, you will get an additional 40 points for your project. The final two categories that will allow extra points are the school type. We're looking for pre-kindergarten through 8th grade, or any combo of those grades. So basically, we're prioritizing elementary and middle schools. And then moderately weighed is proximity to school. So if the project is within a quarter mile of school, you'll get more points, and a half a mile you get a little bit fewer points. But it's required to be within 1 mile radius of the school, but we'll give additional points the closer it is. So again, your total is out of a possible 500 points. After the projects are scored, our step 3 will be taking them to our Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee for review and recommendation. So the 3 lenses that committee will be looking at are, one is that a maximum award amount. So even if you submit several applications, you'll only be awarded up to $2 million. So you can receive multiple grants, but only if they're under that $2 million cap. The second lens will be new applicants. The committee would like to prioritize new applicants to the program, people who did not receive funding in the last round. But unless if that applicant that received funding in the last round has already completed or significantly completed their project. So we're looking to fund new applicants or applicants that have already completed the project that they were working on from the last round. The last lens will be a cost-effective lens. These last two, the new applicant and cost effective, are really sort of tiebreakers. So if there's a bunch of applications that all have the same score near the cut line, that's when we'll apply the new applicant's lens, or the cost effective lens. And the cost effective lens is where if it's possible to fund many small projects instead of one large project, all with the same score, then we will lend towards the small projects with shorter timelines, as opposed to the larger project. But again, that's just at the cut line if projects have the same score, or very, very similar scores. So a little bit about project delivery. We're looking for projects that can begin as soon as possible. We want people to start expending funds at least by the first 2 years. That's because this program runs in 2-year cycles. So if you're not going to spend money in the next 2 years, then we want you to wait 2 years for the next cycle to compete in the next cycle. Your project must be completed within 5 years. It is a reimbursement grant, so we will be reimbursing you for money that you spend up front. You will be required to submit quarterly progress reports, And you must incorporate outreach. Like I said before, it'll be a very minimum level, and it'll be supported by ODOT to provide templates. So the final grant program that I'm going to talk about is the Rapid Response Grant Program. Again, this is open all year round. You can submit a letter of intent or an application at any point. And it is for projects that can't wait for the next competitive cycle and have a high safety need or high urgent need. And I'll go a little bit over project selection. So the request maximum is $500,000. There is no minimum. We're looking for a timely opportunity or an urgent safety need, and again, proof is required for both of these. An urgent safety need is if a recent crash has happened with a injury or a fatality involving a bicyclist or a pedestrian, with a cost-effective solution to fix that problem. Also, the timely opportunity, the only example I can think of this would be like if a tornado comes through your community and you're going to have to rebuild your road anyway, and if you had a little bit of extra money, you could add in that rapid flashing beacon that the community's been wanting for years. So that would be an urgent opportunity that you couldn't have planned for. So those two things have to be or one of those two things, has to be there in order to be eligible for the Rapid Response Program, as well as all of the eligibility from the Competitive Construction Program, which we already went over. The selection process is we're receiving letters of intent and applications on a rolling basis. A subcommittee of the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee will make project recommendations on a rolling basis, and then it will go to the Oregon Transportation Commission to approve the project. Here's some tips for your proposal. Again, here are the key dates to remember. June 15th, the letter of intent is due, and August 31st, the application is due. In your region, there is a traffic safety corridor as well as an active transportation liaison all employed by ODOT. So these are folks to look up to if you have any questions about connecting with a school, or if you just need some additional information about any local conditions. There's also, there could be a Safe Routes to School coordinator in your area. You can look up this website, the OregonSafeRoutes.org website, and learn if you have a local Safe Routes to School coordinator, who they are. Another tip is just to understand Oregon Safe Routes to School a little bit better. Oregon Safe Routes to School is a conglomeration of 3 different pieces. ODOT Safe Routes to School program is what we're talking about today, as well as the Safe Routes to School network, which is a statewide group of people that share best practices, work together, and there are also very local and regional Safe Routes to School programs at the school level, at the city level, at the county level. So Safe Routes to School is sort of a larger movement that is comprised of these 3 main groups here in Oregon. So what you can do to help stay connected with those 3 groups is to, if you Google ODOT Safe Routes to School, you can sign up for ODOT updates, and that will give you emails that I send about here are the upcoming funding opportunities for construction for Safe Routes to School, as well as education and encouragement, as well as you can Google Oregon Safe Routes to School, and you can find the Oregon Safe Routes to School network page and sign up for their network updates. They generally send a quarterly newsletter that gives tips and advice, any networking events that are happening in your area where people can get together and share challenges and best practices. That group also holds an annual meeting that is a great place for people to come together and collaborate. Some key websites are if you Google Oregon School Report Card, again, that will come up with a lot of information about the school that you're trying to work with. It'll tell you their free and reduced lunch rate. All of those equity key factors will be in that school report card. Also, Safe Routes to School application mapping tool is linked to on the ODOT Safe Routes to School page. It allows you to see the crashes that meet the criteria that we're looking for, bike ped crashes between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. You can see if your project is within a mile radius of your school. You can find your GIS coordinates for your project on that page. You can also If you want to, you can print up sort of the screen view of that page and use that as your map for your project. If you add a couple of notations onto it and sort of let us know where what you're thinking about for your project, if you'd like to. You can also, we have a site that shows and tracks ODOT funded projects that's linked to on the resource section of the ODOT Safe Routes to School page. And again, the Oregon Safe Routes to School network page has a lot of resources on it around education, additional grant opportunities, finding out who your Safe Routes to School coordinator is, things along that line. Okay, let's talk about meeting the local cash match requirement. So match for this project can be local, state, or federal funds. So you can match state funds with state funds in this program, and you can match with federal funds, although it's not recommended as it would federalize your entire project. If you do have a project that was completed with federal funds in your area within the last 2 years, that you can use that as match, then that would not federalize the project, but that has to be closed out. This is the way, defining a larger project is the way that most people met the cash match requirement in the first round. So imagine that you have a school and you have been working on making safe crossings to that school over the past 2 years, and you know that there are 5 areas that need safe crossings. You've already done 2, and you're looking to fund 3 more. You define your larger project as safe crossings at X elementary school, and then you connect these 3 new crossings that you want to build with safe routes funds with the 2 that you've already built. So again, describing a larger project where the safe routes to school piece is only a part of that project is the most way that people were finding the cash match during the last cycle. There's also the Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank, where you can take out really low interest loans pretty easily through ODOT that can help you with the cash match. There are also a couple of local grants that you may be available for on the federal level. The community development block grants are issued by Housing and Urban Development. You can build construction projects with those, as well as community facility grants that the USDA Rural Development Department gives out, and you can use that as a match as well. You can build construction projects with that, and you can use that as a match. Those are for very specific communities. The Rural Development Grant is for very small communities, and HUD is for communities with people experiencing homelessness populations. So there are certain requirements that you have to meet to see if you're eligible for those funds. So a little bit examples around the cash match again would be that say that you have an existing project where you are fixing curb ramps. You can use that as match for an expanded Safe Routes to School project where you're adding sidewalks and crossings. Another example are if you are your existing project is that you've already purchased a right of way and you've designed your fixes through preliminary engineering. Those 2 can be used as cash match. Your expanded project would be to actually build the sidewalks and stripe the bike lane. So that's another example of how you could meet your cash match. So a couple of project samples are what we'll talk about next. There are some key design guides that it might be helpful to look at to try to design a project that's really aimed for students walking and biking to school. So the FHWA Bike and Ped Guide, Small Town and Rural Multimodal Design Guide, ODOT Bike and Ped Guide, ODOT's Blueprint for Urban Design. AASHTO and NACTO both have great guides, as well as this countermeasure tool is super cool. pedbikesafe.org. You can sort of put in what you're looking at, and it will spit out what your options are. So some of the things that we funded the last time around and that we're looking to fund this time around again are projects that help students cross the street. projects that help students walking along the street, projects that slow down traffic, and other projects. Again, you'll see this little note in the corner, like we're not looking to pave entire roadways with this fund. It's just a small amount of funding, and we don't have, we want to prioritize really the bicycle and pedestrian portions of the projects that you're working on. So for crossing the street, things like marked crosswalks, curb extensions, signalized intersection improvements, in-street ped crossing signs like this little picture that we're showing, and raised crosswalks. Walking along the street, things like sidewalks, alternative walkways, and paved paths that are in the public right-of-way. We're looking to slow down traffic, so school zones, speed bumps, things like that. Also, lighting and other creative street design are things that we're looking to do with the Safe Routes to School funds. Here are some types of crossing treatments, some pictures of some of the things that we mentioned before. There's a couple of best practices for building sidewalks. You're looking to build the shortest route. You can see in these photos that people have, when sidewalks kind of go around poles, people tend to walk straight through and create a little path for the shortest distance. So just some tips for sidewalks. Also make them wide enough that people can have shy distance, which means that they want a little bit of space to pass each other. They don't want to walk right next to a wall. So try to make your sidewalks wide enough to be comfortable for students and families. You don't want a sidewalk that kind of meanders around. So this sidewalk, the person would be walking around these street trees and then having to then they're hitting a driveway next, and so this is just not really, this is a meandering sidewalk, and that's not recommended. Also, starting or ending sidewalks, we don't really want to do this sidewalk closed sign. You always want to give the pedestrian somewhere to go. So see how this ramp, even though it's not ideal, the ramp takes people down onto a shoulder. That's more advisable than just closing the sidewalk and not giving anyone anywhere to go. So talk a little bit about types of bicycle facilities and when to use them. So this is a great chart that you can look at. If you know the volume of your road and you know the speed of your road, this can tell you what sort of bicycle facilities you're trying to get to. So if you've got low traffic, low speed, if you've got low traffic and low speed, then a shared lane or just a marked bicycle lane will work just fine. If you're looking at a little bit more traffic and a little bit higher speeds, like getting into like 25 to 30 miles an hour to 35, buffered is preferred, especially for our families and our students. And if you are in the high speed, high capacity range, you're looking at trying to do something separated from that high speed, high volume traffic. So how do you choose? You can determine what is your context, and then there's a couple of different options for those tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 bicycle facilities. So I would recommend taking a picture of this slide and taking a look at that. So how to separate from traffic. Here's a couple of examples of how folks in the past have separated bicyclists from that high speed, high volume traffic. Also, folks have used these flexible delineator posts to separate. And we don't have Q&A today. Also, I'm looking for any feedback from the first round of Safe Routes to School, so be sure and send me that information if you have any. And here is my contact information. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see an application and a letter of intent from you. Give me a call if you have any additional questions. Thank you.